And this is Mike Fader on Sirius XM Left 127. We are going to talk about the debate, but a little later, not right off the bat. Obviously, there was an argument the other night that many of us saw between a psychopathic liar and an ambivalent, depressed man. So we'll discuss that later on. And I guess that's it. But right now, we have a guest who has a relatively recent book out. Now, I know I've been overdoing it lately with all the books that I have on, telling you, oh, this is one book you have to get. Well, I'll try not to overdo it, but scrub all that in the past. This is one book. My guess is a recent book out. It's called The Chrysalis Effect, The Metamorphosis of Global Culture, and it's by Philip Slater, who's my guest. And this is one, ultimately, I could not recommend strongly enough. All of you should really get this book and read it. It will put things into focus, and I mean everything: economics, politics, culture, you name it. It will put it all into focus, and I can't urge you enough to buy this. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Mike.
All right, if I read some introductions so people know who they're listening to?
Sure. Go ahead.
All right. Philip Slater has a Ph.D. from Harvard and taught sociology at Harvard, Brandeis, and USC. Was a professor and chairperson of the Brandeis Sociology Department in '71 when he resigned to found, with Jacqueline Doyle and Maury Schwartz, Greenhouse, a nonprofit growth center where he led encounter groups and personal growth workshops. He's been a merchant seaman, actor, business consultant, cookie salesman. Really, cookie salesman. That's good. Marriage officiant and president of a theater. And there is plenty more. He's acted in over 30 plays and films, and has written 20 plays, taught writing and playwriting at USC. He is currently teaching online courses at California Institute of Integral Studies, and is author of one of the best books I ever read in my life. It was a major book in the 70s that influenced a whole lot of people. Certainly it did me. It's called The Pursuit of Loneliness. The new book is called, or the recent book is called, The Chrysalis Effect, The Metamorphosis of Global Culture. There's so much in this book, and it covers so much territory: history, science, and everything else, culture, politics, economics. Maybe we should just start off. You can explain. We're having a lot of trouble with the phone there. Are you on a landline or a regular phone?
I'm on a cell phone.
Cell phone. Oh, okay. Because it's sliding around all over the place.
Okay. Let me go inside. I think that's part of the problem.
Okay.
I've been, I don't know.
Should we follow you inside, or should we just? I can whistle in between. So.
No,
or sing.
We can keep going.
Okay. All right. So
it seems to work better down here. So.
Oh, okay. It still sounds a little hollow, but you don't want to use the landline. All right. So the Chrysalis Effect, and then in case the CHRYSALIS Chrysalis Effect. What is the Chrysalis Effect?
Well, this is. I use a metaphor basically that I think Elizabeth Sartoris used first, just describing the process by which caterpillar turns into a butterfly, and basically the caterpillar goes along munching and eating its own weight in leaves every day, and then one day these what are called no, I've forgotten what they're not called.
The imaginal cells?
Yeah, that's right. Imaginal cells, and they start to develop, and the immune system of the caterpillar immediately attacks these cells and kills as many of them as it can, and eventually they keep coming, however, and eventually they overwhelm the immune system of the caterpillar, and it sort of dissolves and forms a cocoon, and then out of that comes the butterfly. Yeah. And this seemed to me a wonderful metaphor, and it seemed, I guess, first to Elizabeth Sartoris as a wonderful metaphor for social change because, it doesn't ever happen smoothly. The first thing that happens in social change is that, everybody fights like hell against it. And then eventually, however, the imaginal cells of the society just grow and overwhelm the immune system of the old culture.
And a butterfly is a completely different creature than, it's not just a caterpillar with wings, right?
It is different somewhat structurally, but the DNA is the same. It's all there.
Well, it can certainly
it's all there to begin with.
It can do things that a caterpillar can't do. That's for sure.
That's true. That's true.
What?
So that was sort of the introduction to my book, to describe something that people sometimes don't really understand very clearly. All they see is the immune system operating, and they don't realize that that's the necessary beginning of change. Is that there's a very intense attack on the forces of change.
So, it's almost as if the first attack, although it's not intended to be an attack, it's almost natural. Well, it is natural. The first aggression or attack, to use those words in quotes, comes from the imaginal cells, right? In other words, there is something there to begin with, and something new comes in.
The imaginal cells are invasive, essentially,
right.
Although they are. I mean, this is all programmed, in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not like they come from outside or something. They grow out of the body of the caterpillar, or they grow in the body of the caterpillar. I don't want to get into this too far because I'll be way out of my depth in biology.
That's okay. But, I mean, the metaphor is
essentially. I'm interested in the metaphorical aspect and not the biology so much. The fact that it does reflect the way social change happens. In other words, if a change isn't being attacked, it's not a real change.
So,
or people don't understand it.
Well, I've read this in many history books and other kinds of books. A lot of people have said that unless somebody is coming down really hard on you, you're not making enough of a disturbance. In fact, there's a U.S. Supreme Court case, I think Brandenburg versus the U.S. or vice versa, where it was okay this is in the 1960s, the Supreme Court decided it was okay for a certain group to advocate the violent overthrow of the American government because they were located in a shack in the woods in Minnesota. In other words, if it was going, you see the point, obviously, if it was going to have a real effect, they would have come down on them and put them in jail,
Exactly.
So, you can judge the importance of a change, I guess what you're saying is, by the overwhelming reaction to it.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So in your book, you move from that to describing another kind of a filter in a way to view everything, history and the way things change in every way, which is the control culture versus or the integrative culture. Maybe you could describe that. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, first of all, these are, I'm standing way, way, way back. This is like a view from space or something, because it's very hard to see this particular forest from the trees. We've got a world full of a great variety of different cultures, each one unique, and I'm saying this is something that has been common to 95% of the cultures in the world that exist today for, about, probably 10,000 years. Mm-hmm. And it really began with the development of agriculture and people living and owning land. I mean, the concept of of ownership, made a huge difference in life. When we were hunter-gatherers, we didn't own anything, and there was nothing to fight about, and so people may have had disagreements and skirmishes and so forth, but war as we know it didn't exist until agriculture, until there were people who owned things, and there were villages and groups of land and people with territory that could be attacked or defended, and so on.
And then also along with that comes hierarchies, right?
Comes hierarchy, comes what we now think of as the male role of basically boys being brought up as if they were to spend their lives being soldiers. Mm-hmm. And we still pretty much, although it's changing, we still, to a large extent, and certainly in many, many parts of the world, we still do that. A boy who, doesn't cry when he's hurt is called a good soldier. It's that whole macho thing is still very deeply ingrained, and it's completely irrelevant. I mean, war. I guess maybe war is. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I guess it's becoming irrelevant. It's certainly, if you looked at it right now, without looking to the side, up and down, or any other way, you would see basically wars and rumors of wars, and the worst sort of macho behavior. But maybe this is the last peaking of it before something else happens. I don't know.
Well, one of the things I point out is that as a culture, and this is really part of the chrysalis effect, that as a culture begins to decay and to live with the threat of cultural change, the defenders of the old culture become more extreme and more strident and more desperate in their attacks. And you usually see at that point a demand for return to so-called basics of the old culture, mm-hmm. And that
the good old values,
the good old values, and they want to purify the culture and drive out the evil, invasive elements, and so on and mm-hmm. so on, and that's a pretty good sign that whatever that is on the way out. Because in order for a culture to survive, as Lewis Mumford pointed out about 80 years ago now, a culture to survive, a system to survive, it has to have contradictions in it, because cultural systems especially, are much simpler than reality, simpler than human beings, and they always distort reality in some way, and particularly they distort human beings, because people are very complex and they have all kinds of contradictions, and mm-hmm. everything that any human being has ever done is potentially in every human being, and every culture takes some of these qualities and says these are good, and takes some other ones and says these are bad, mm-hmm. and so that any culture that exists is in a sense a distortion of humanity, and I'm not going to pick out any one culture, because it's true of every single one. It's true of any one you could devise.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When you say any culture that exists is a distortion, do you mean because the culture becomes rigidified and defines itself as the only real culture? Is that what you mean?
No, I don't mean that.
Oh, okay.
I mean simply that some human qualities, like take for example the male role. The male role says you should basically repress any feeling you have except anger.
Mm-hmm.
Anger is okay, that's manly, but, being too emotional or too silly or childish. I was recently at a wedding where some kids were playing, and they were mostly girls. They were, I don't know what they were doing. They were like 3 years old or something. They were rolling around on the ground, and
Mm-hmm.
and this boy was with them, and his father came up and yelled at him. He said, stop doing that. Only girls roll around. I thought, and I realized how powerful that negative word "silly" is.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who once complained seeing his wife and daughter fooling around in the surf in the ocean. And he realized that he didn't know how to be silly,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, we're trained not to be. This is, be a man.
I'm thinking of this line from The Godfather, whatever, male patriarchal violent culture. And the line from The Godfather where there's some important thing that happens, and he said, "Don't be careless. Women and children can afford to be careless."
Right.
And men, I remember this, and men
Right.
can't be careless. So if you're saying if men are allowed to be angry and they're supposed to suppress other emotions to their great cost, then women must do the opposite.
Women the same way. I mean, women were, they can do anything except be angry. That was not allowed. Then they got over that. And this is a real problem for men today because. Women, as I say in the book, women are deciding that, the female role includes everything. They can be everything, They can be human.
Mm-hmm.
And that means be the things that men can be as well as the things that women can be. And the thing is that the male role has always been defined as not female. It's a completely negative construct that, be a man means, don't be a woman or don't be a child. So, men grow up being basically depressed. Most men, you look around, most men are depressed.
Is that because they're not able to express other emotions?
Well, yeah, because they're sitting on all kinds of you see a bunch of women at a cafe or someplace, and they're all laughing and having a good time and all talking at once, and they're all, they're enjoying themselves. The men, they sit around and look at their computers. I mean, it's really depressing. But I think that's part of that training. And the thing is, it's completely irrelevant today because, how many of us are actually going to be soldiers? And the ones that are, aren't too happy about it. The suicide rate of veterans is like horrendous. More people more veterans commit suicide than die in battle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and how heroic do you have to be to sit in a room in Las Vegas and
right.
and play video games with drones dropping bombs on people, 10,000 miles away.
Well, you talk, among other things, you talk about in the book, which interests me too, is body language and linguistics. It affects everything. For instance, I interviewed a major in the Air Force on this show about a year ago who's in charge of what they call a wing right outside of Las Vegas in an Air Force base where he operates a drone wing. And what happens is, and you pointed this out, in 1971 in your first book, and it was prophetic. You were talking about the B-52 bombers, flying 50,000 feet up, never seeing any human being, and just letting go. But the language goes with it. For instance, I asked this guy just last year, did you ever kill anybody by accident? Right? First of all, the word "kill" is not a word they like to use. So he objected to that. Secondly, they use this word individual. The target or individual. They never say person or people. It's a linguistic thing that goes along with this, right? A sort of distance from humanity.
Well, yeah, it's what they have to do to deal with the fact that we really are genetically programmed not to kill our own species. And so there has to be something has to overcome that if you're gonna send people into war. And basic training, a lot of basic training, is just that, to develop a sense of imperviousness. One of the books I draw on is this guy, Lieutenant Colonel, I can't remember his first name, Grossman.
Oh, right, Dave Grossman, I think.
Yeah. And who writes about, basically, the fact that men don't like to kill people, even though they're trained just to do that.
You know, World War II, they were shooting over people's heads or not firing their weapons, right?
Yeah, I know a man who was, in fact, I know more than one. I know two or three men who were in World War II, fought in Germany in the Battle of the Bulge and everything else, never fired their gun.
But the Germans and the Japanese didn't seem to have a whole lot of problem killing people.
Well, it depends. Well, but the Japanese have a whole culture built on dealing with that issue, in a sense. And of course, it's their feeling about life and death is a very different one than ours. And the Germans had to, they had to be convinced, and this is true everywhere. How do you get, let's say, in a place like the old Yugoslavia or Rwanda or Lebanon or any other place, how do you get people to suddenly decide that people they've been friends with and living with among for centuries, that suddenly they're the enemies and you got to kill them?
Well, how do you get that? How does that happen?
You do that because you've got a leader, usually a dictatorial one, who says these people are responsible for everything that's wrong in your life. And if they're convincing enough, it works.
But why would the mass of humanity so often, unfortunately, be so willing to believe that?
Because they don't want to believe it's their own fault or the fault of people that they look up to, which is even more. I can ask you another question, similar in a totally different area.
Yeah.
Why do Americans, poor Americans, vote against their own self-interest and vote basically for the corporations that exploit them and mistreat them and poison them, and why are they always on the side of the rich, whose interests are completely different from theirs?
And the answer is?
The answer is they identify with them.
Because they want to be them or like them?
They want to be them. Our culture is an individualistic culture. We basically don't train people for community. We train people to get ahead as individuals. And the whole idea is to, quote, better yourself, which means really getting rich. The whole country was peopled by all of our ancestors, except for the slaves and Native Americans. All of our ancestors left communities and felt that was less important than individually, including the family in that, individually getting ahead.
Well, my wife and I were we're in the midst of watching a wonderful documentary by Rick Burns on the history of New York City. And it's never been clearer. It's amazing. The Dutch came, the British came, some people from England came over here and other places. Some of them wanted religious freedom, some of them wanted freedom of speech, whatever it was. The Dutch came here to make money. This is New York City is based on making money, and New York City became the American city. It became the American culture, Yeah. Yeah.
We make a lot about the whole religious freedom thing because it, makes a good story. But, just in terms of just the mathematics of it, it's like That's a drop in the bucket, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Most people came here because they wanted to get ahead. They were poor. They felt there was no hope for things getting any better where they were, and they came here to make money. And that's almost, you know, I would say easily 90% of all the people who ever came to this country, they came here to make money.
Well, maybe as you said earlier, maybe it's not just to make money, but some people came here so they wouldn't be interfered with and could be who they wanted to be, to express themselves, but at the expense of the native culture here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, all right, yeah.
There's some of that, but, you know, I mean, you know, there are a lot of reasons. So people had lots of reasons for coming here, but you know, the dominant one always was getting ahead.
So you have the control culture, which is masculine, which starts with after hunter-gatherers, who basically everything was sufficient unto the day. They went out and got or picked or hunted whatever it is they needed. And they didn't own places. They didn't build buildings, monuments. They didn't store up vast quantities of anything. So they didn't have to defend anything, right? So
that's right.
But that at a certain point in history, you say that, now this is the part in the book which I never quite get right, even though you mention it over and over again. At a certain point in the book, 8,000 to 10,000 years ago in various places in Europe, whatever, maybe it's nomadic cultures from the East or from someplace else. Why is it all of a sudden that they felt that the hunter? I don't really understand. In other words, why the hunter-gatherers disappeared so quickly and so easily, as if they.
Well, it wasn't quickly. I mean, this took place over thousands of years. You know, there's still a few around, and you know, long enough for anthropologists to get to them. I want to say, by the way, that most of what cultures that we consider primitive are not. They're not hunter-gatherers. They're not. They still embrace basically the same values as you know, industrialized countries in terms of the control culture. And their goal is to you know, manipulate nature and get more control over it, so that they can get what they want out of it. And that was, you know, hunter-gatherers, they didn't think about anything except the moment and the day, and
they didn't own anything, right?
And they didn't own anything. And that was still, I mean, it was true of the Bushmen and the pygmies and the jungles of the Congo, and you know, which they're all pretty much extinct now, but you know, when they existed, that was true. The man who studied the Bushmen said that he felt embarrassed that he wanted to give them something. He realized there was nothing he could give them. That they would want, because they, you know, if you're a hunter-gatherer, you don't want to carry a lot of stuff around.
Well, this whole concept came into tremendous crashing relief when you see this documentary on New York, where the Dutch write out a piece of paper, a contract with the Indians who lived on Manhattan Island, and said, "Okay, here's some beads and a couple of shiny things. Now we own this island," and they had no concept of what that meant. They said, "Well, all right, sure, yeah, that's nice, you know."
Whatever.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, as I point out in the chapter on religion, that the concept of the golden age of the Garden of Eden is so it's so clear that what they were talking about in both of these stories. You have people who basically are living in a state of nature. They don't, and suddenly that vanishes, and they have to work, for a living. Mm-hmm. Hunter-gatherers don't work. They get food and they support the whole tribe, on what they do, and they don't do very much. and you read the language of both of those stories, the Adam and Eve story or the Greeks' description of the Golden Age, and it's very, very similar. And that's the stress. And there's a wonderful line in the Greek version of the Golden Age, where it says, "The earth unforced gave forth its fruits." Which I think is a great phrase, because that's the essence of the control culture, is forcing and manipulating and controlling. And of course, our whole world is our whole civilization is based on that. But then comes the realization that, all right, now we've got all this stuff, but, it's not making us very happy. We got a lot of junk, and we don't know what to do with it, and we're ruining the earth. And we got a finite planet to live on, and it's not going to sustain us very long. And we increased and multiplied, and we're fruitful to excess, and now we got to think about, and we're, fighting all the time. We got to think about what we're doing.
Well, clearly, if people don't finally cooperate with each other, then the suicidal trend just keeps going till the whole planet is depopulated. But I wanted to mention again what you were talking about in the book. Essentially, is this control culture which we've been under for a long time: masculine versus feminine. Children are weak, women are weak, men are strong. So the other side of the control culture is what you call the integrative culture. And what's that?
Well, that's what we've begun to move toward, and then the signs begin really they begin in the 18th century. They begin, for example, when Europeans encountered the Native Americans and realized, these people get along without dictators. They don't have, they work together, and they figure things out together, and our whole, and we borrowed a lot from that. Our whole Constitution is based to some extent on, quite a large extent, on the way Native Americans handled their relationships. And that was kind of a shock to the Europeans. They couldn't imagine living without a king, or a chief or something. Mm-hmm. And so that was one thing. Then, of course, there was the women's movement, which began first of all in the middle of the 19th century. Mm-hmm. And what they were after was education. It wasn't even the vote. They just wanted education. And then came the suffragist movement, and then that whole process, and then various minorities beginning to follow that example, and then in fact getting ahead of women. Mm-hmm. on that, and then the women's movement really taking off in the 1970s.
Well, then there's the civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement, which came first. Really, that was the beginning of the 60s, in a sense.
Well, it was
the civil rights movement.
It's instructive to see the reaction, which I lived through since I'm in my mid to late 60s here. I lived through that 60s period where when the reaction to anti-war demonstrations, hippies, long hair, the idea that people would just sort of want to enjoy themselves rather than work themselves to death and rise in the world was so outrageous that I still have a couple of little bumps and bruises from the bricks that the construction workers threw at me. And a couple of arms that don't work right because of the cops whacking me, right? They just couldn't stand it. They could not stand it, I mean, we were like girls to them, right? We weren't really men. Why else would we want to avoid fighting? And why would we want to wear our hair like that? And why would we want to do this and do that? Why would we want to have fun instead of working?
Right.
Right.
Well, it was a real it's one of the things I point out in my book is that during the '60s, you had the civil rights movement, the women's movement, and you had radical political, anti-war, and then you had hippies, and everybody
gay rights. Yeah.
That really didn't get rolling until a little bit later, but anyway, everybody thought that their approach, that is, either stopping the war or civil rights or feminism or the hippies, that their way, this is the way to go, and there was a lot of argument going on about that's the wrong way to go. This is the important thing. We've got to do this first. We've got to do that first. And the only people who understood that this was all one movement was the right. And they caught on immediately and started to organize against it.
So it's interesting. So the very people who were in all these different groups who wanted to change things and have rights and advance themselves couldn't manage to see that they were all interlocked, and yet the people who they were trying to get these rights from or trying to assert these rights to, they saw it more clearly than the people actually doing it, right?
Yeah, they realized it was all a threat to the old way of life, and they began to organize against it, and which came to fruition with the election of Reagan, and that's been burgeoning ever since. I mean, at the moment, the immune system of the caterpillar is totally on top of things, and in terms of, in this country at least, in the terms of that struggle.
So women, in a way, basically represent, generally speaking, or throughout history, and certainly now, they may represent a more sort of right-brained, integrative culture. In other words, you have this wonderful example in the book that you quote from some study that was done, where a whole lot of men and a whole lot of women were somehow recruited or signed up to some alleged conference, and they put all these women in one big room, the organizers of this event or whatever, and they closed the door, and nothing was happening. And the women almost immediately organized together and worked together to send representatives. And very quickly this happened to the owners or the runners of this group and said, we want our money back. What's this? We're sitting in a room. Whereas you say the men in the same situation, similarly, in a different room, argued with each other and broke into fistfights as to who and how they should present themselves to the organizers, right?
And who would lead? That was the other.
And who would be the leader, right? And the women didn't need a leader, right?
Yeah. So,
so where are we now? I mean, here we are in the present. We've got. Did you see that debate the other night?
I couldn't watch it, frankly.
It's too much, right? I know.
There are people I can't. I simply can't look at. And people who smirk a lot.
Oh well.
I know what they're all going to say, and I'll read about it in the morning. But
it's the concept, as you're pointing out in this book. It's the concept of everything is a war. Everything, all the sports metaphors have to do with war. The blitz in football. Winning. You say winning the West. The Americans. Everything is beating, winning, succeeding, and overriding. So basically, it's almost like ancient combat. You got two men running. Who want to run the country, and they might as well just put on armor and get swords and fight it out, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, except that one of them, and that's what's interesting, is that one of these guys doesn't seem to want to do it that way. He seems to be almost, dare I say it, a little bit less of a man. You know what I mean? He seems to want to try to work things out and compromise, and the other guy is part of the old control culture. Either I'm in charge or you are, Yeah.
Well, and Republicans always have this winner-take-all kind of thing, like if we get the majority, we can do whatever we want. They've never had the sense of, bipartisanship has never been well, I won't say never because that's not true. Because back in the day,
well, under Eisenhower,
Republicans were just as capable of bipartisanship as Democrats were. But that was back, before the '60s. Right? I mean, even Nixon. Nixon looks good now compared to Republicans that we've had since.
Well, he created the EPA of all things.
Yeah. And but I mean, since the sort of neocon revolution, where it became, this is a battle to the death, and you don't fool around, no holds barred, anything goes. That's sort of been the Republican viewpoint, and it's really, I think it's a shock to these sort of old school Republicans who had a much more measured idea of what democracy was about.
Well, based on what you're saying, though, the reaction to the cells, to this invasion of new cells, the perceived invasion, basically you've got these Tea Party people and the fundamentalists. I guess you would be predicting that we're seeing the imminent decay of this kind of culture because they're reacting so strongly, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can only take a metaphor so far. It is a metaphor. It's it's not. Mm-hmm. Everything doesn't fit perfectly, and every attempt at social change doesn't succeed. Movements have been squashed before, and this one could get squashed. Mm-hmm. And certainly, in the past, the United States has always been in the forefront of change. It's just no longer the case. At the moment, I mean, it's the only country in the world that where global warming is a political issue. I mean, climate change is just everybody in the world takes it for granted. They're all preparing for it.
So how did America go from being a place that was a thriving democracy that where people thought that change and innovation and improvement was the best thing that you could do, to being this rigid, fossilized, giant dinosaur tramping around on the earth? Everybody else has got, government health insurance. Everybody is, trying to get along. Well, not everybody, but, countries where there are democracies. How did we wind up? Was it something in our genes to begin with? How did we wind up being the great?
The answer to that is yes. And I already gave you the answer. I gave you the answer right at the beginning. Yeah. I mean, you can, in some ways, plot the course of society or institution by its beginnings. What was characteristic of the beginning? Mm-hmm. Well, the beginning was that we were populated by people who were individualists, and that meant a lot of things. People who came to better themselves, supposedly, and that usually meant materially. And so we are extremely materialistic society where that's valued, even seen as a virtue. To be rich is a virtue. To be poor is bad. Mm-hmm. It's not. You're not a good person. You're not a worthwhile person. You're not even worth. Something to be avoided, like a disease.
Well, if God wanted you to be rich, you'd be rich, right? Obviously, you've been abandoned by God. The big guy.
Yeah, I know. It's. But it also means that we are a population of people who are not very good at cooperating compared to most people in the world. Mm-hmm. And, we tend to want to be the leader, want to be rich, want to be this, want to be that. We're suckers for fame, money, and power, and the three big addictions. Mm-hmm. But some of that's changing. I mean, I've pointed out some examples in the book, but really a lot of young people who became famous very quickly and found out how empty it was. And I thought, wow, that's amazing that people actually can learn that, when they've sort of maybe base their lives on success, and then realize, okay, you get there, you get the success, and then what? You're still the same person, you still got the same problems, you still got the same relationships or lack of them, and so on and so on. And then suddenly you're disillusioned and you don't know what to do. And a lot of people are experiencing that. Well, that's true of money. It's true of power. These are people who can still to be discontented. I'm always impressed when I travel anywhere that you see rich people traveling. They're always complaining about something.
Well, all the billionaires are complaining now that they're under attack.
Yeah, well, I mean, they go somewhere, they go some really fancy place, and they complain about the service, they complain about the food, they complain that they're not getting their money's worth. I mean, that's the key complaint. Of course they're not, because the things they really need, they can't get.
But they could get them.
Get a whole lot of other stuff.
They could get them if they understood what they really needed, because it's not that hard to get, right?
No, it isn't. It isn't. I mean, except when you're, distracted by your addictions. And I did write a book called Wealth Addiction. And
what kind of addiction? I'm sorry.
Wealth
addiction. Right.
Yeah, money. I should have called it, but anyway.
We're up against. If you just tuned in, I should have identified earlier. You're listening to Philip Slater, who is sociologist, I guess, originally sociologist. And the book we're talking about is called The Chrysalis Effect: The Metamorphosis of Global Culture. I guess we only have a minute or two left. When I read Civilization and Its Discontents, you see Freud is talking about Thanatos versus Eros, right? This is before the war even started. In 1938, this book came out, right? And he was pretty gloomy. He was a gloomy guy anyhow, but he was gloomy about he wasn't a fun guy, but he had a lot of he was very cynical and sort of gloomy about. He thought that Thanatos in human beings, individually and as a group, would overtake Eros, love, and it would destroy the earth originally. He didn't even see World War II, let alone the atomic bomb and everything else. So with all of this and the way the world looks right now, are you hopeful about the future of the planet?
I try to be. I taught a course last spring about basically sort of about where we've, sort of the basic questions: who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? And the students, they wrote their final papers, they basically all concluded we're doomed. And I thought, wait a minute, this isn't good.
Because a lot of people feel that way who are young people. They feel that way.
Oh yes, absolutely. It's very common. They feel like après moi le déluge. It's like we're the last people who are going to have any kind of life on this planet. But which I think is unnecessarily gloomy. I think there's always hope. I mean, people are amazing. I mean, and in my book, I point out that we are in many ways, subtle ways, moving in a direction away from this destructive path. But whether the change will come fast enough, that's the question. I mean,
actually, we I just realized that we were supposed to take a commercial break earlier, and we didn't do it. And since it's all about money, I would get in trouble if I didn't do that. So I've got to truncate our conversation to make money. Okay. So
Okay.
anyhow, so I really appreciate you coming on. The book is The Chrysalis Effect, The Metamorphosis of Global Culture, and it's Philip Slater. And everybody who's listening should read this book. Thanks again for coming on.
Okay. Thanks. It's a pleasure being on. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you. We do have to go straight to our break. Let's do it. Okay, we're returning to politics, so everybody can calm down now and, put that strap around the top of your arm, heat up the spoon, drop the stuff in, get the needle ready. We're going to go right to politics. I'm sorry I wasted your time last hour. But I like to talk about things more important than politics sometimes. Or rather, I should say, that encompass politics. All right, so do we have Roger with us?
Yep, we do.
Oh, we do. And you have you, and I have you now, so we all have you. Roger Bybee is with us. He's our pal here who reports on economics and politics. And I'll read your bio again, if you don't mind. Roger is a writer based in Milwaukee. This is Mr. Ryan's home state in Wisconsin, who has specialized in writing about healthcare reform and economics for national publications like Z Magazine, American Prospect, In These Times, Dollars and Cents, and other publications and websites. And he blogs on labor for In These Times. .com, contributes to other publications, Foreign Policy in Focus, Progressive Populist. He edited the weekly Racine labor newspaper in his hometown of Racine, Wisconsin, for 14 years and was active in labor community struggles to stop plant closings. However, one plant closing occurred just this week, or the final version of it, where machinery was actually, a plant was dismantled and shipped over to China, where people were sitting right in front of it and demanding that Mr. Ryan and Mr. Romney come and do something about it. The Sensata plant. Maybe you know something about that, right? That was in Illinois.
No, actually, I had not heard about that one.
Oh yeah. This is one that Bain Capital owned. It was a plant that had something like 3,000 employees and was making money, and Bain Capital took it over. And just this week, finally sent in the last trucks to dismantle. And I talked to some of the workers there, and this is a clear example of a Bain-owned successful business, but not successful enough that they loaded with debt and finally shipped the whole thing and outsourced it to China. Sensata.
Okay, and the name of the company again?
Sensata. It's there's various companies that own other companies, but this is called Sensata Technologies that own the other. I forget the name of the actual plant, but the larger company.
Okay, and this was the one in Illinois?
That's right.
Oh, okay, yeah. Actually, I've written about that, and I interviewed the mayor of the town.
Mm-hmm. And I had a guy
who was quite outraged about what Bain Capital was doing, and wanted both Romney and Obama to come to his town and debate the issue of offshoring jobs.
As if they ever would. So you have a couple of new articles here. Next week is the Republican debate, and you saw the debate, or whatever you want to call that mess that happened on Wednesday. And you had, among many other things, and we're going to talk about this in a little while with the listeners and take a lot of calls on this debate, but basically you had Romney up there lying about everything, and lying on such a scale that I think it sort of overcame this other poor guy. He had no idea. I don't think he's ever dealt like face-to-face with somebody who he had to argue with, who based his entire argument on out-and-out lies. And so Ryan will be up there next week with Biden, and Ryan is a different kind of person than Romney. He's not. I don't think he's such a salesman as Romney is, like an opportunistic guy who'll say whatever he has to say to get a vote. But he's going to be up there with his rigid platform and his beliefs, so much as what they are. And here's one article you wrote. It says, take a look at what Paul Ryan. Now, whatever he says about people or helping people or what's good for the country or good for workers or people, here's an article you wrote called, take a look at what Paul Ryan did to his own congressional district and be very scared for your country. And maybe you could talk a little bit about his attitude about tax cuts and Social Security. We heard all these things talked about last time, but in this article, maybe you could go over about what he's done in his own district that we should pay attention to.
Which includes my hometown of Racine, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. And Janesville, which is his hometown.
Right, and the whole district has suffered hugely from deindustrialization and all the consequences of people being out of work for prolonged periods of time, which is loss of health care benefits, declining health, physical health, mental health, increased crime, increased poverty among children, greater need for housing and free food, and that's been characteristic across his district. And those plant closings behind the deindustrialization have been the result of policies that Ryan has consistently favored in terms of so-called free trade, which fosters the offshoring of jobs. So in one way, Ryan has been carpet bombing his district, the factories of his district, with his economic policies. And then, on the other hand, in terms of the consequences of the job loss from deindustrialization, he's opposed extended unemployment benefits, help with home foreclosures, a higher minimum wage, special health care programs.
Now, this is, then you say, and here's the list of things, and you're mentioning a lot of them. Janesville has been afflicted, as you mentioned, by a major increase in child abuse and neglect. Now, this is his hometown where he has a really big, comfortable house. He lives in Janesville with his wife and his kids.
Right.
Okay, and Janesville's rate, where he lives in a big house, the rate of child poverty has nearly doubled to 47.1% since 2000. The percentage of children eligible for free or reduced-cost lunches ranges from 43 to 69% in the major cities.
Throughout the district, right.
And Janesville has experienced a near doubling in suicides over the first 2 years since the GM closing. So here's my question to you. This hypocritical son of a bitch who lives there in this big house, all this awful stuff is happening. Why do they keep electing him? What's wrong with them?
Well, I think one key thing is our political system that allows a candidate who's favored by billionaires, and Paul Ryan has been favored by the infamous Koch brothers and a hedge fund guy named Paul Singer, who's worth $19 billion, and they have been among his biggest funders throughout his career. And for over five elections, he had a 31-1 advantage over his opponents in funding, and in the last election, it was 325-1. So he was really able to drown out his opposition.
But we've had this discussion before. Are people so stupid? And I want to use blunt words here. If people in Janesville have been laid off from their jobs, they don't understand the simple understanding. They don't get it that he's responsible for that. Well, who do they think is responsible for their being laid off from jobs?
Well, the people that I've interviewed, for the most part, do blame Paul Ryan. But I think there's a tremendous number of people who become socially isolated when they lose their jobs, and they focus just on the survival of their families and really withdraw from the community and withdraw from activities like voting. So I don't think it's so much a matter of people being fooled by Paul Ryan as being turned off by the political system, and then also just isolated by the need for survival.
So it's a despair, apathy. They just so he just sort of rolls over everything and just keeps doing this.
Yeah, I'd say despair more than apathy.
Mm-hmm. Well, so and when it comes to the now clearly he's the Ayn Rand champion, and then what that means is that he believes in quote unquote the job creators, the rich, are essential to coddle them and give them everything they want, tax cuts for them, benefits, anything that they want to have is okay with him because they're the ones who create the jobs. Doesn't seem to have worked that way in his own district, though, right?
No, it really hasn't. But he's kept on voting to cut the survival programs that people in his district need. He has a very famous quote about, we have to guard against becoming a society where people settle for a hammock of dependency.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's very parallel to what Mitt Romney said about the 47% dependent on government programs and passive and hostile to those who would take away their entitlements.
Has Paul Ryan ever had a real job?
He's almost had no private sector experience except for a brief stint driving the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, which is this garish red and yellow truck with a giant hot dog on it.
A giant wiener.
A giant wiener, yes. And I'll make no Freudian jokes about it.
No, it's okay. That's what I'm here for. So Paul Ryan was a giant. How long was he a giant wiener for?
I don't know.
Like a year?
Exactly, but it was a brief period of time.
Did he earn
virtually no private sector experience?
Did he earn his living and provide for his family by driving this truck? I mean, was that real?
No, that was prior to his marriage. In fact, during his first congressional race, he wasn't married, but he did take around his sister-in-law and his niece or nephew so that he would look like a family guy.
Oh.
And then he was also photographed in his campaign ads wearing a hard hat and being on a construction site because his family owned a very large construction business. And he really had a very peripheral role in the company and only very briefly, but he sought to portray himself as a family man and a businessman.
So then he goes, he graduates from school and he immediately gets involved in, from college, and immediately gets involved in political life, right? Lobbying, working with other politicians, serving on
writing speeches. Yeah, he was sort of handed from one major right-wing figure to another. He was mentored by a Ayn Rand fanatic at college who was connected to right-wing networks in D.C., and so he got a job with Senator Bob Caston of Wisconsin, who won his election through unethical means. Then he worked for Senator Sam Brownback of Kansas, William Bennett, the nation's moralizer, who also happened to be a gambling addict, and then he wound up also working for Jack Kemp and the predecessor organization funded by the Koch brothers, which is now Americans for Prosperity. So he has a long relationship with the Kochs that actually precedes his career in Congress. But since his time in Congress, he's received a tremendous amount of money from the Koch brothers.
So and when he was growing up, he didn't really endure a lot of suffering and poverty, right?
No, he did have some setbacks in terms of the death of his father at age 17. After which, by the way, he was eligible for Social Security benefits, which he.
But he didn't take. He didn't take Social Security, did he? I mean,
yes, he did. He did take those Social Security survivor benefits.
Really, he mooched off the government.
But I should point out that he was one of the three big Irish clans that were among the most prominent and wealthy in Janesville. So he was very well connected from birth, not quite as well as Mitt Romney, but
why? But did he actually need the Social Security survivors benefits?
I would tend to doubt it. I don't know his his personal finances intimately, but his father was a wealthy lawyer and presumably owned a share of the family construction business. I don't want to go a whole lot into that because I don't know all the details. But there's no question that he came from a wealthy family, and that despite all his efforts to dismantle the Social Security system and dismantle the safety net, or the hammock, as he calls it, he took Social Security benefits himself while he was going to college.
And his wife, wasn't she a banking lobbyist or something?
She was a lobbyist for banking and oil interests, if I recall correctly. She did regard herself as a Democrat prior to their marriage, but she was a lobbyist herself, and she came from a very wealthy family, and I believe within the last year had an inheritance worth at least $5 million.
So he's not going to need any government safety net. So I guess it's okay.
No, he certainly isn't.
So here's Ryan, and with his beliefs, there was his tape. Obviously, everybody's seen his tape. Too bad the president forgot that there was this tape on Wednesday night. But, the 47% tape of Romney. But Ryan had his own quote I saw floating around from, I think, 2007 or something like that. What was this, about 70% of the people in the country are really not willing to work hard? Or what was that? Did you follow?
No, he was saying that the good news is that 70% of the people wanted no part of government dependency, and only 30% did. And I don't recall exactly what the basis of that is, but the fact of the matter is that public opinion surveys make Americans look like Scandinavians in terms of their support for a social safety net, so long as it doesn't bear the fatal welfare label. If you don't call it welfare, Americans show very strong support for programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and even the old Aid for Dependent Children program for new mothers, new single mothers with children. So long as you didn't call it welfare, Americans have consistently voiced support for those programs.
Now, you say in your article here, you mentioned, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Roger Bybee, who is an absolute expert on all politics that have to do with Wisconsin, especially economics and that kind of area. Ryan opposed, according to your article, the S-CHIP healthcare program to aid low-income people, as well as vowing to repeal the Affordable Care Act. But in Janesville, there are people suffering a whole lot, as you mentioned in here, right?
Right, and I know there's a tremendous unmet need for health care. I spoke with the director of the clinic there, and they had a major expansion thanks to programs like S-CHIP and the Affordable Care Act. They'll be able to expand some more to meet the needs of. There was close to 3,000 workers laid off by General Motors at Christmas in 2008. And then there was another 3,000 workers at supplier plants who were laid off as a result of what happened at GM. And then there was roughly another 3,000 who worked at the stores, bars, restaurants, retail establishments that serve the General Motors workers and the workers in the supplier plants.
So that's
loss of. about 9,000 jobs.
So here you have close to 10,000 people who are actually providing for other people who actually then would also patronize other businesses. So you're talking about a ripple effect, which is massive.
Exactly.
Massive.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Oh, also, here's something you say. Ryan has voted against expansions of foreclosure prevention assistance. What's that all about?
Well, there's been a tremendous explosion in southeastern Wisconsin, Ryan's district, of home foreclosures, especially after the 2008 meltdown, but and the GM closing, other plant closings in the district. So there's been a tripling of home foreclosures in the district since 2000. So there's been an obvious need for assistance to families in order to hang on to their homes. And Ryan has opposed various programs to provide that help. Not that the programs have been particularly good, because under the Obama administration, as the New York Times pointed out in an article about 6 weeks back, the programs were designed by Timothy Geithner and Lawrence Summers, two Wall Streeters who were concerned about keeping the bankers having veto power on key decisions in these foreclosure programs.
Yeah, wonderful. Here's something else you mentioned in your article. Ryan has opposed expanding funding for job training too, right?
Right. And now job training is often oversold as a solution.
Oh yeah, sure.
For unemployment. So that's important to understand. But clearly, if openings are occurring in areas that require a new set of skills, like nursing, and people who work in auto plants or other manufacturing jobs want to move into nursing or obtain other specific skills, they may need to go to technical college for a couple years and need support while they're doing so that their families can survive and they can hang on to their cars and homes. And Ryan has opposed that in terms of concrete votes, and there was some very sharp criticism from the head of the manpower council for his area.
So
it's called Workforce Development Commission for his.
So with all of this, no help for foreclosures, destroying every kind of safety net, plant closures, and he votes with industrialists and corporations all the time, and bankers, and then on top of all that, when everybody is down and out and practically can't even afford to live, he votes against extended unemployment insurance for people.
Exactly, and that went over like a lead balloon with all the unemployed workers in Kenosha, and it was a big topic at union meetings among the former General Motors workers. But still, Ryan won re-election after that.
Well, I still really find that astounding and unbelievable.
Yeah,
I really don't get it.
Well, part of, and in addition to the funding advantage that Ryan has had because of his connection to billionaires like the Koch brothers and this hedge fund owner, Paul Singer, the Democratic Party has put very little effort into that district. And even this year, although Ryan has his strongest opponent ever in a guy named Rob Zerban, Z-E-R-B-A-N, if you want to make a contribution. And Rob Zerban has really very strong progressive positions on all the issues that Paul Ryan does not.
Yeah.
From the offshoring of jobs to tax fairness to health care to infrastructure rebuilding. but the Democratic Party has not made that district a priority because they've seen Ryan as too strong. But in a way, they've allowed Ryan to become the incredible force that he has at age 42 by neglecting that district in the past.
Seems like very poor political planning. But let's move on a little bit with Ryan. He's going to be up there on this debate, and since clearly we all saw that Mr. Obama was absolutely useless and didn't point out all the lies he was hearing from Romney, and he didn't respond to all the all the insanity and nonsense that Romney was spouting. He just stood there and took every punch that was thrown at him. We have to assume that maybe, hopefully, Mr. Biden will bring up a lot of the things that you're talking about in here. And
I would certainly hope so. One of the things that Biden has been very good about talking about, and this is a position of Romney and Ryan that has not gotten a lot of attention. They favor ending all taxes, all U.S. corporate taxes on the foreign subsidiaries of U.S. corporations. So when General Motors has a plant in Mexico or General Electric has a plant in China, those would be exempt from U.S. taxation under plans that Ryan won approval for in the House, and he and Romney now champion, and it's on their website.
So how could he call himself a job creator? Is he running for the vice president of China? Because that's where the jobs are being created, right?
Really? That's absolutely the case. It would be a huge incentive for U.S. corporations to move more jobs to China and Mexico, because not only would they get dirt cheap wages based on the denial of democratic rights to the people in both those countries, but they'd also be paying no U.S. corporate taxes.
Well, I hope that that Mr. Biden will stand up there and point this out, because it would, stick a pin in the whole balloon there. I mean, if the man is standing up there with his basic ethic being this Ayn Randish stuff, the job creators are taking away jobs and shipping them overseas. They're not creating jobs. And
no, what they're doing is leaving behind craters in the U.S. and those craters are in my hometown of Racine and in Janesville and elsewhere across the country. And when you uproot a major manufacturing plant, you're really destroying much of the economic base of hundreds of towns across the U.S. And you're also attacking the social cohesion of those communities as well.
Well, one last item here before we move on to the second article that you wrote. First, we'll take a break and come back and talk to Roger Bybee. I think most people don't understand that everybody knows about NAFTA, right? But NAFTA, if you watch American horror movies, right, and especially older ones, you always see the same scenario in American horror movies. There's some monster, often there's a monster, like in Jurassic Park. There's some monster that you see, right? And somehow the hero, or whoever it is, manages to defeat this monster, and it's about halfway through the movie or whatever, or a third of the way through. Then they look up and see a monster 10 times bigger than the other one, right? And everybody knows about NAFTA, but very few people know about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. And we're going to talk about this giant monster of a free trade deal that Mr. Obama is pushing, which makes NAFTA look like a little baby. And that's going to come after we take a break. But last question about Ryan here. People should also know that that Ryan is a big pal of Todd Akin, right? The anti-female.
That's right. They co-sponsored a lot of legislation together, and Todd Akin, of course, is the Missouri congressman infamous for his comment about legitimate rape. But he and Ryan co-sponsored a number of pieces of legislation utterly taken away the right to abortion for women and attacked their rights to contraception. So while Ryan has gained a reputation among the very easily impressed Beltway media for being an economic genius, actually most of his, by far, the majority of the legislation he sponsored had to do with reproductive rights.
So basically, if you're a woman, if you in any way rely on lunch programs, if you're old and you want so your Social Security, which you worked for all your life, if you need Medicare, if you're disabled, if you need unemployment insurance, anybody who's like that or knows somebody like that should basically be voting against this man. That's what we should be seeing, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, he stands for truly the top 1%, and he also combines this stand for the most ruthless form of capitalism with a kind of social Calvinism, the real fire and brimstone variety that would deny rights to anyone in terms of their sexuality, in terms of gay rights, in terms of women's right to make choices over their own bodies in terms of contraception and abortion.
All the political ads in the world and all the platforms and all the speeches, the debates really are important in one way because people watch TV and they get their information from TV, and people are addicted to an entertainment culture. If Biden doesn't successfully point out the things that you wrote in your article, then it'll be kind of a lost cause. Let's take one call before we go to our break. Don, you're on, Don.
Yeah, hello. I'd like to talk about the tax policy you were talking about momentarily.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a CPA with 35 years experience in an international accounting firm, and some of the comments I heard about, that a company by outsourcing will put the profits in a foreign country and never pay any U.S. tax on them. I don't know where people are coming up with this. It's not anywhere near accurate.
So hold on a second. So wait. Don, point out first, before Roger responds, point out why it's not accurate.
Well, there's a provision called Subpart F that's very complicated.
Oh, please, Don, don't hide behind that, Don.
Well, no. What happens if they repatriate the income back to the state that's taxable, or if certain activities take place while that money's overseas, such as the products are sold to a third country, then it is taxable there. Also, this comment about that by outsourcing the jobs, you get tax breaks or significant incentives. There is no such thing in the tax law. There are normal deductions of the cost of operating a U.S. business. We are losing many of our businesses in the United States are forming their headquarters in Ireland and Sweden and Switzerland for the reasons that the U.S. corporate tax structure is too high on corporate America.
Okay, Roger, go ahead.
Okay, that is a huge, huge myth. The corporate tax rate in the U.S. is at 35%, but the effective rate is closer to 13%, according to a number of studies, including the Organization for Economic Development. And
Don, Roger's talking now.
Okay.
And the Citizens for Tax Justice has amply documented this, and that's the status quo. So corporate taxes in the U.S. are actually among the lowest in the advanced world. So that's point number one. Point number two, if you look at the Romney-Ryan website, you will see a reference to territoriality in terms of the corporate tax structure. And what that refers to is ending the jurisdiction of the U.S. tax system over the foreign operations of U.S. corporations. And the tax expert David K. Johnston has written on this. I've interviewed him at length on this, and I'd advise you to look at some of my articles on this.
Okay, so Don, you have the last word, and then we're going to take a break.
Yes. In order to be competitive in a global market, we need to have the ability to move cash worldwide efficiently for investments and to bring it back home. And a territorial tax system does accomplish that. There's numerous articles out there that support that. And an effective tax rate, there's 8,000 ways to calculate it. And I'd like to know how they're defining an effective tax rate. Is that the amount of tax on gross revenue? And I think that's how they get to that lower rate.
Meanwhile, we got to move on, take a break, because I want to talk about this other thing. The bottom line here is, as far as I'm concerned, is basically that jobs are being shipped overseas. They're making profit on these jobs overseas, and Ryan wants to help them avoid paying taxes on this profit. 2 and 2 is 4. Any second grader knows that already. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back. Thanks. Roger, hold on.
Sirius XM Left.
Nobody thought that you could break through the tobacco industry, but it was done.
Fairness, equality. Sirius XM Left. 127.
Fairness, equality, liberty, fraternity. Why don't they say something real when they do these ads? Let's see. We're talking to Roger Bybee. And Roger, how could people get in, just find a place where they can get your articles, where they can get some clear, true information about all this stuff?
Okay. The easiest way is to type in Z-Space.
Z-Space, okay.
As in Z Magazine, Z as in Zorro. Mm-hmm. Plus Roger Bybee. That's Bybee.
Okay, Z-Space /
and
Roger Bybee.
You'll get to my website where I have a lot of articles on Paul Ryan and a lot of other topics.
So, what is recently there was a meeting, a secret meeting, actually well-guarded secret meeting of 600 major corporations and various other organizations and sovereign governments in Leesburg, Virginia. And what was this all about? What is the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
That is a free trade agreement, a so-called free trade agreement, that is being worked on by the U.S., Canada, Mexico. China's being brought in, Japan, a number of nations on the Pacific Rim, with the goal of developing a set of rules for international trade that will essentially establish a kind of corporate supremacy over the rules and regulations set up by democratic national governments. That's what the North American Free Trade Agreement does on environmental rules, for example. And when Mexico blocked a trash site in their country, they had to pay a fine because they did not give maximum profits to the U.S. corporation that wanted to set up this waste dump in Mexico.
So in other words, national laws against environmental pollution, or certain kinds of tax structures, or ways that workers are treated in
or
various
consumers,
all
or,
of the
financial rules for the Wall Street of each nation.
So all of this would be superseded by this larger corporate global government pact, which would in effect sort of be able to squash every other local or national rule that protects its citizens, right?
Exactly.
So how is it? First of all, Mr. Obama is obviously sending representatives to this, right?
Right.
On behalf of the United States.
His trade representative Ron Kirk has been very involved in negotiating this, and the terms of it were being disclosed to just 600 corporate leaders, and the members of Congress were being cut out of it. And so even members of Congress who had in the past supported so-called free trade agreements were furious about the secrecy surrounding the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
But you know, I went on to the website for the U.S. Trade, so whatever it is, U.S. the United States government trade
representative, right?
Okay, I went on the website and they listed a group of people involved, and they call them stakeholders, which is very quaint. You know, all the people who were involved, and it included, because I read this on the website, the Sierra Club, the AFL-CIO, and the ACLU. So is there something contradictory here? If these groups are attending this, isn't that a good thing?
Well, if they were attending it, they were very, very recently included because only in June did documents about the Trans-Pacific Partnership get leaked by someone in government, and they went to the Public Citizen Organization, which published them. But until then, really any kind of citizen group like the AFL-CIO, the Sierra Club, the ACLU were entirely shut out of the process. Mm-hmm. So if this is the case, it's a very, very recent development.
I actually, I'm going to do a show on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, devote an entire hour to it from various people who are opposing this, and I am going to invite people from the Sierra Club to come on and explain to me what they were doing there and what they know about it. But the Trans-Pacific Partnership is something that's being avidly participated in and pushed by Obama. So now Obama is running, obviously, for re-election. But I don't think people are aware of what this is. I would like to have seen, this moderator was a total loss last time, but I would love to see the next moderator bring up this thing, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because it's something that's going to reshape the entire world to the detriment of the environment, consumers, and workers in this country. And people don't even know about it. They don't even know about it.
No, absolutely. There's barely a word about it in the major media, or almost nothing. It's only in the alternative media that you'll see anything about it. And the Obama administration has been very disappointing on the question of the offshoring of jobs and the establishment of rules that creates corporate supremacy over the laws of the United States. Mm-hmm. For example, the North American Free Trade Agreement has these side agreements that are supposed to protect labor rights and the environment, but these side agreements have procedures that have never been invoked by any U.S. administration since NAFTA came into effect in 1994, including the Obama administration. And I've met with Mexican workers who were bitterly disappointed that the Obama administration was taking the same stance as George Bush, that they weren't going to say anything about the way that the Mexican government was tolerating employers crushing union rights, mm-hmm. And doing nothing about the level of environmental pollution being spewed out by American corporations and other corporations operating along the border.
Well, this is shifting the discussion just a little bit, but the other day I read, in fact, just yesterday this happened, I read an article that several people, including one woman who is a grandmother down in Texas who owns a ranch, not a big one either, she's not rich, threw themselves bodily in front of some bulldozers, owned by a company which is clearing land for the gigantic pipeline, right, for the XL pipeline. And,
right, Daryl Hannah was involved in that protest, I believe, as well.
That's right, and this woman, who owns this ranch, has been there, most of her life. Actually put her body in front of a bulldozer. And also want to mention that they had this bulldozer within feet of her and did not switch the engine off. Right, there could have been a little bit of an accident, and who would care? So this pipeline, my feeling about this pipeline is that Obama probably, if he gets elected, the day after he gets elected, this whole pipeline is going to get laid down and built. I mean, do you have a feeling about this or an opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's an environmental disaster in terms of the damage that it will be causing along its entire length, and particularly as it goes through some very environmentally sensitive watershed areas in places like Nebraska, and it poses a menace along its entire length. And it really strikes me as an area where Obama has capitulated to the myth that corporate America has been very aggressively promoting. And
oil independence, and right,
and and you see the growing prevalence of so-called fracking to get natural gas, the fracturing of the substrata of the land far underground, and they're using chemicals and substances that aren't being disclosed to the public. And
the ones that we do know about even are the worst cancer-causing chemicals there are, formaldehyde, et cetera, et cetera. So listen, we only have a couple of minutes left. Let me ask you this question. Did you watch the debate the other night?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, and you've done tremendous amount of writing on this. You know a lot about economics. You know about the president's policies, about Romney and Ryan's policies. Do you see, and we only have a couple of minutes, but here's what I want to get from you. Do you see a big difference between these two guys, and who are you voting for?
Well, I live in a swing state, the swing state of Wisconsin, so I recognize that a vote for Obama is a vote for survival programs that a lot of people depend upon in terms of government stimulus funds that saved about 3 million jobs, in terms of food stamps and health care, although the health care program is that he got passed is flawed. So in a variety of ways, it makes a difference to the American people, and I think it would also signify a less aggressive foreign policy. And in too many ways, Obama has continued policies of the Bush administration overseas, but with Romney having this incredible band of hawkish neocons like John Bolton and others advising him, God knows what he would do in terms of aggression and spending $2 trillion more than the military are requesting.
So basically, you're going to go the lesser of two evils route, right?
Right, and it's a question of not thinking that voting is the most important political act that I'm going to do, but realizing that having an Obama administration is going to create at least a minimally more decent life for tens of millions of Americans and probably hundreds of millions of people overseas.
Right.
The differences are not nearly as sharp as I would like, nor what Obama promised when he ran in 2008. And I think that's why a lot of people reacted so emotionally to the debate, because they've so badly wanted Obama to stand up for the people the 99% who are being victimized in our society and overseas. And Obama has seized so few opportunities to do that. So even though intellectually one's analysis of the debate should have been dominated by all the lies that Mitt Romney came up with, there was a way that a lot of people responded emotionally, because this was once again a time when Obama passed up an opportunity to really speak up.
Maybe the best opportunity he ever had or ever will have, because it was the one presidential debate that focused on domestic issues, and he blew it completely. Listen, you know what? I've got to go because we're at the end of the hour. Roger, as always, I appreciate your coming on and letting people know about this information. Nobody else will know that as well as you do, especially about Ryan.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I hope people benefit from it.
Yep. So next week the debate is between Joe Biden and the giant wiener, and we'll see who comes out the winner. One of them is a big pot of mustard, and the other one is a wiener. If only they could work together, it would be delicious.
Right.
Delicious.
Well, I think Ryan will not be as smug and
no.
I mean, he's certainly personally arrogant, but he's not. We got as assured in front of an audience as Romney is.
Well, we'll see, and I hope that's the truth. All right, thanks a lot. We got to go, and we'll be back.
Okay.
We'll be back the next hour with our debate coverage.
Trucking, got my chips cashed in, keep trucking. Like the Doo-Dah Man together, more or less in line, just keep chugging on.
Okay, we're back. Mike Fader, Sirius XM Left 127. If you want to get in touch with me about anything you hear here, go to my website. It's called Fader Files, and it's spelled Feder, FILES.com, FaderFiles.com, and you can get in touch with me, sign up for my mailing list, and also one other place. I don't want to load you with too much stuff, but one other place. There is a website, actually a Facebook page that I run, which is a very well participated in Facebook page. Hundreds and hundreds of people. We post videos. We have debates on politics, sometimes rancorous debates, but I hope in the end we're all on the same page as far as wanting to have a democracy. And it's called Occupied Territory. This is not about the Middle East. The occupation I'm talking about is the fact that corporations and the rich have occupied the United States, have occupied the White House, occupied Congress, the Supreme Court. It's called Occupied Territory, and it's on Facebook. Go there and pitch right in. There's ongoing debates all the time. Having said those two things, we will talk this hour and take your calls about the debate. I watched the debate. Most of you watched the debate. We saw Romney unload a gigantic 24-wheeler truckload of psychopathic bullshit and lies that I have never seen the like of in a long time. The man is like an opportunistic virus, like an autoimmune disease in living human form. He can sell anything to anybody. He sees anybody's weakness. He lies and lies and lies and lies and doesn't blink his eyes. He's a psychopath. He says whatever anybody wants to hear, and he makes things up. I think he made up so many lies, and he was so aggressive that he took the other guy by surprise, who's used to an intellectual sort of academic community. You know, he's got his PhD, he's got his law degree from Harvard. By the way, both of them have law degrees from Harvard, so it's interesting. They have more in common than most of us have with them. So they're up there, and he's used to being the president. He's been there for 4 years. He's not used to people talking back with him or arguing with him. He already thinks he knows everything, this guy. And however nice he may be, I don't know, he thinks he knows everything. He's grandiose. He can be arrogant and distant and condescending. And for 4 years, nobody has ever gotten up in his face and said, that's crazy, that's stupid, that's wrong, I disagree, you're wrong about this, you're wrong about that. And so Romney's doing this, and obviously you all saw it. Obama stood there. Romney is throwing all these softballs and giving him all these openings, and Obama stood there with his hands, I had to use the sports metaphors, but there you go. His hands down at his side, taking every punch that got thrown at him. Every feint, every move, he just stood there right in the middle of the ring and got whacked the whole time and never hit back. And he let a lot of people down. And what I couldn't stand also is he gets up there and the first thing he says is, first of all, I want to say it's my anniversary, and there's my sweetie up there, you know, and I wish I was with, you know, and he says, and I just want to say that it's been whatever the anniversary, 20th anniversary, you know, I wish I was with my, you know, I'm here tonight with my sweetie. I don't give a fuck he's with his sweetie. People's lives are at stake. However, I understand that. A lot of people are saying he doesn't really want to be president again. He's had it. He's sick of all the trouble. He didn't realize it was going to be that hard. And he's not really a fighter, which maybe you necessarily sort of have to be in a crazy, hard job like that. And I think he's had enough. And I think that's what he was showing us. And you know what? I would rather be with my sweetie on Saturday nights than come down here. But I have a responsibility to my public. I was elected by all the... Stop laughing at me. I was elected by my public to represent you. And I will do that, even if I have to run for re-election and I don't want to. But believe me, I sympathize with the guy. I would rather be with my sweetie right now than down here. So in a way, I sympathize with the guy. All right, so you all saw what you saw. You heard what you heard. You got your theories. You got your reasons. The number here is 866-997-4748. I mean, here's a guy, Romney, who gratuitously and sadistically tells this poor old fossil who never should have been on the stage in the first place, this useless old fart, Jim Lehrer, who should have been retired 50 years ago. He runs right over him, steps on him, and that's not bad enough. He tells him he's going to fire him the minute he gets in office, and that's not bad enough. He's going to fire Big Bird. He's going to lay off Big Bird. Now, if I was standing there and I was Obama, even if I didn't want to be president, even if I was letting the lies get past me, you think I wouldn't catch that and make fun of him so mercilessly and ridicule him for wanting to fire Big Bird that he would look like a moron the rest of the night? Can you imagine what Clinton would have done with that? If it was me standing there and he said, and I'm going to lay off Big Bird because it's unnecessary, right? I would have looked at the guy and said, you're going to lay off Big Bird? You're going to fire Big Bird? Who every kid in the country has watched, who's this totally harmless, love everybody bird? Unbelievable. You're going to fire Big Bird. I would have looked at him and laughed, and that would have been the end of him. And however, all of this stuff happened, and Obama just stood there and took every punch, let every lie go by, didn't take any chance to trip this guy up. It looked like he really didn't want to do it. And you get the feeling he didn't want to be president. And he's letting a lot of people down. Unfortunately, whether he wants to or not, he's in place. He's running. He has a lot of people depending on him. And he let everybody down. Not only that, he let those broadcasters down. I mean, the MSNBC people are too moderate for my taste. But they've been punching for him. They've been in there bashing their heads against the wall. They've been working hard for Obama. He gets up there, let them down. I thought Ed Schultz and Chris Matthews are going to have heart attacks. And they were right to be that angry. They're in the corner for this guy, right? They're working for him every minute. He gets up there in the ring and stands there and gets whacked and falls down. It's almost like he was being paid to take a dive. I don't get it. All right. Let us go to the phone calls. Mitchell, you're on, Mitchell.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey,
okay,
Mitchell.
I got a lot to say about this.
Well, we got a lot of calls, but as much as
I'll try to be concise,
right.
Okay? First, I want to comment about the format. Now, I was a former high school debate coach. I also helped set up a congressional debate in the primaries in New Jersey this year. My initial reaction was that Jim Lehrer was deficient even in the overall questions, where he just, in that there really were no questions. It was just, compare and contrast your differences. Mm-hmm. And then I thought about this. This kind of a format really doesn't lend itself to any specificity in the questions if you're going to have an open discussion, because you're going to look partisan or like you're attacking only one side. It's almost impossible to do it.
Well, how should he have done it?
Well, I don't know that this is such a fantastic format. I think if I could design the ideal debate format mm-hmm. in an hour and a half, I would probably give a block of time, let's say 35 minutes for each person, and they would have a specific timer, and I would allow 3 minutes for the moderator to ask 10 questions, and I would not allow a rebuttal from each of them, and they would have an understanding that you're going to be asked 10 questions during this debate, and at the end of, when your 35 minutes is up, your mic is going to be turned off, mm-hmm. And you're not going to get a rebuttal period, and that's it. And, so thereby, if they went over their time, if they chose to filibuster, and monopolize the time, when one of the latter questions would come up, they wouldn't be able to answer it because they would have no time left, which would cause them give their opponent a huge advantage.
Well, they could have been also, they could have attached electric wires to their testicles, and then if they ran like 5 seconds over, he could have hit a button, and that would have shut him up.
That's a little bit drastic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to suggest,
So then moving on from that, so I said, all right, I'll give Lehrer a pass with that. Of course, but he didn't do any follow-up question whatsoever, and he couldn't control them, in terms of stopping them from, filibustering and going over time and really not sticking to topic. I mean, he just couldn't do it. I mean, and I don't know that, it would be fairly difficult probably for anyone to do it, but he was I think his main deficiency in this whole thing was, not asking, cogent follow-ups, and that may have thrown Obama also. I am not making an apology for Obama on this one. No, I'm with everybody else.
Oh,
I mean,
no, he really blew it.
He totally blew it, and I don't, and you know what? He's not incapable. If you take a look at their January, I think 30th of 2010, there was a conference with all the Republican House leadership, and there was no teleprompter. There were like 30 of them, on him, and they were all attacking him, including Paul Ryan. And he handled it quite well. As a matter of fact, he handled it so well that Fox, cut the broadcast, in the middle of it because he was answering the question so, proficiently.
I think it's interesting is I think to the extent that any of them have a choice over who they would want from moderators or they pick from a list, to me it seems like the two of them got together and independently each decided, let's have old Jim on and we can walk all over him.
Well, who do you think really could have, would have necessarily...
Keith Olbermann.
Well, maybe, but then Keith Olbermann is so partisan and so tough, that the opposition would never have allowed it. I mean, would you allow like Bill O'Reilly to be the moderator?
Well, then somebody, let's say somebody who's a Supreme Court judge who's not, somebody middle of the road federal judge who's used to getting people to shut up and to tell them what to do and to.
I heard somebody say Judge Judy.
Judge Judy, yeah, Judge Judy.
Now, look, he's not, this, I think, I hope and pray to God that Obama will show up at the next debate, and I think Joe Biden is going to surprise a number of people. I was reading a piece by John Heilman in New York Magazine, and he reminded everybody about how well Biden prepped for the confirmation hearing of Judge Bork, and Bork was a tough customer, and he pretty much destroyed his candidacy for the Supreme Court. Thank God.
Well, Ryan has a deficiency. He's rigid, and he sticks to. You see him in front of the NAACP, right? In other words, if he's got a plan and a speech and something he wants to say, he can't change. He's not spontaneous. So anybody like Biden should be able to handle him pretty well.
I think so, and frankly, the president can handle Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney is not the most spectacular debater ever. I mean, Bill Clinton is probably,
So if he can handle him, what happened?
I think they probably had a strategy for him to be, somewhat subdued and presidential and lay back and don't get crazy with him, keep your composure and wait, let the moderator, deflect some of this stuff.
Well, then when he saw after a few minutes that the moderator wasn't deflecting anything or controlling anything, then he should have had the spontaneity to step in and change his plan.
That's true. And the other thing, the other theory that I have is that, this is, to me, one of Obama's biggest deficiencies is that he has never been a really good person at explaining what he's doing. He leaves a vacuum there. I mean, look what happened, like, for instance, the health care law. Nobody knew what the hell is going on. Now as it's getting rolled out, people have started to say, hey, this isn't so bad. There are rebates being given. There are, their kids are getting to stay on the policies. There are certain preventative cares. The donut hole is getting filled up. But this has never really been adequately communicated. And it's astonishing that it isn't. because it's, he may be getting the job done, but he's not communicating that to the public, and so the Republicans just fill in that big vacuum.
Well, on the other hand, then there's my point of view, which is extreme, with my whole Jill Stein thing, which I ardently believe in, is that perhaps one reason why there didn't seem in the end to be such a difference between the two of them wasn't because he didn't assert the difference, was because maybe there isn't such a difference.
Well, no, I think there's a difference, and maybe if it's you want to call it the lesser of two evils difference, there's a difference. I mean, you and I disagree on this a little bit, but there's certainly a difference between the.
Well, there's enough of a difference that he could have pointed out at least some.
Oh, yeah,
of it.
I mean, you're absolutely right. By the way, I love your picture of Big Bird on top of the Romney mobile.
Oh, somebody sent me that. Oh, yeah. Listen, if you tonight or tomorrow on the Fader Files, my website, I'm going to put in a picture that somebody sent me from Facebook, actually, of Romney on their family vacation with their station wagon, and instead of the dog on top, something else is on top, and I'm going to put the picture up. So check out the Fader Files. So I guess one last comment, and then we got to move on to some other calls.
Okay. Well, let me let you go. I don't want to monopolize things.
No, that's all right.
It's always great to talk to you, Mike, and you have a great weekend.
You too, Mitchell. Let's go to Oswaldo in Texas. Where is everybody? You want to talk about the debate? You want to talk about the upcoming debates? It's 866-997-4748. What, are there too many games on tonight? Are there a lot of games you all want to watch? Maybe that's it. Oswaldo in Texas, you're on.
Hi, how you doing? Are you there?
Hey, you're there.
Yeah, I listened to I'm a truck driver, so I listened to the debate on the radio.
Oh.
And I thought it was a draw, right?
Well, that's interesting because I've heard a couple of other people as recently as this evening tell me that on the radio it didn't seem like it was such a victory for Romney.
No, it didn't. You can't get the visual.
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting. Yeah.
So the next morning, I stopped at a truck stop, and I was in Mississippi at the time, and I asked a couple of black women. I go, "What happened?" They go, "Just like you were saying, he was worried about his anniversary."
Right. He was he wanted to be with his sweetie instead of up on stage, and believe me, I could sympathize.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a nice sweetie there too. I'd want to.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And the thing I thought about this. Mitt Romney is an alpha male. That's what he does. He's a bully.
Yep.
He honed his piece in the primaries, right? He had his practice. He's been doing. He sold, and then he told, and then he sold.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You're absolutely right. He is. That's what he does. He asserts himself over other males. He's been trained to do it, and maybe he does it by nature, But in the course of doing that, one thing he does is, and he's learned as a salesman. I read a piece about him in the New Yorker. A longtime friend and business partner of his said that this guy could sell anything to anybody, and the way he does it is. This is the secret of Romney. One of the reasons why everybody is always so concerned or upset, or they point out that he will never say exactly what he's going to do. Of course not. You don't make a business deal or sell people by coming in advance with a sales pitch and saying exactly what you're going to do. You find out while you're talking to somebody or whoever the audience is, what they want, what they need, and you change your tune every couple of seconds to hone in on what they want, and you go for the jugular. That's what he's used to doing. That's why he lies so much.
And I almost felt like Obama was agreeing with him.
Well, he was agreeing with him too much. Like, for instance, that's the thing that was really upsetting. Like, when they came to Social Security, that was the worst thing I heard all night. Jim Lehrer, when he managed to get a word in edgewise, said something to Obama, what about Social Security? Is there a difference? And the first thing Obama said, which was shocking when you think about it, and really upset a lot of people, and me too, he said, I believe that Governor Romney and I would agree on a lot of things about Social Security, that it needs to be tweaked, et cetera, et cetera. Is he a Republican or a Democrat?
Yeah.
That was upsetting. Anyhow, it's interesting.
Obama is also an alpha male, but I don't think he knows it.
You know what?
He didn't go. He grew up without his father, right? So he didn't have that strong male presence.
So there you go. So you put your finger right on it. I mean, I did not grow up with my father, right? I did not have a father in my house, and there was no strong males anywhere near me, anywhere in my family or anything like that. And I have spent my entire life not being able to assert myself correctly, because boy, and to the extent where it's not bullshit and it's not ruining the world, to have alpha males all over the place. I mean, that's another whole discussion, right? If I mean, fuck the alpha males. I mean, really, but to the extent that I have never been able to assert myself in certain ways, it's because I didn't learn how to be a quote unquote man or male from another man, right? I didn't have a father. I didn't have a father. This guy didn't have a father either. And Romney grew up with a father. He grew up in a man's world. He knows what it's like to be a man, for whatever that's worth.
And his father was very successful.
Right. And he was a big, strong man. And Romney grew up with men. He's got boys. He's a man's man, to whatever that means. And Obama is basically a woman's man. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
He's almost a mama's boy.
He's a mama's boy. And you know what? That's not such a bad thing in such a vicious world.
He's a nurturer.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. But he won't go with that because he feels like if he's going to be that way, he's going to look like, a pussy, right? He's going to not look like a man. And Romney just rolled right over him. There's this other thing, too, is that some people brought up, and some of the listeners who are black brought up, it's the same old thing. He doesn't want to look like an angry black man insulting a white man,
I don't know. That doesn't hold water.
All right, I'm just bringing up what some people mentioned to me. I'm gonna move on and take.
I don't know, but.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that thing.
He needs to dig deep and find. He needs to go back to Chicago roots or something.
Mm-hmm.
The next two debates are make or break it.
Well, Chris Matthews was talking before the debate started, and they were asking Chris Matthews. Somebody was asking him how should he come out and how should he start his attack, and he mentioned something that John Kennedy, right before he was debating Nixon. Bobby Kennedy was in the room right with him before he walked out the door onto the platform to debate Nixon. And John Kennedy said, how should I approach this? And he said, kick him in the balls. True story. And somebody should have told that to Mr. Obama, He could at least pretend.
Yeah, but he doesn't know how. He's never been, it's like on the schoolyard.
I know.
At home or with the boys.
Listen, I sympathize with the guy. I never knew how to fight with people. I never knew how to stand up for myself. I ran. I was very fast. I could do a good 100-yard dash. I mean, I took off because I didn't know how to stand up for myself. And he's in a position where he's got to stand up for himself more than anybody, and he doesn't know how to do it.
And I have a feeling he's not very good with numbers.
Yeah, did you get? Yeah. You're right. I got that feeling too. He wasn't. And Romney's an expert at it.
Yeah, he's dealt with numbers all his life.
Yeah. All right, listen.
But it's not a high math. This is simple math here.
No, Romney knows in a second just exactly how many people whose jobs he ruined. He can tell you right away.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, I'm going to move on. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Interesting. Yeah, you don't see it on the radio. You don't see that body language. Then maybe it didn't come off so bad. John from Birmingham, you're on.
Hey, Mike.
Hey.
I, like a lot of other Democrats, wanted to jump through the television and just shake Barack and tell him to wake up. But in retrospect, I saw a new commercial last night where it showed Romney on television talking about his $5 trillion tax cut and how false it was and him trying to back up on that tax plan. And basically the narrator said after they showed him lying about it, said, if you can't believe Mitt Romney here, how can you believe him when he gets into the White House?
Mm-hmm.
Now, they've got... And I'm sitting back and looking at some of the replays of Barack, and it was almost like Barack was sitting there smiling after he'd say something, going, my God, there's more material from commercials. They can fight back through commercial time. Barack doesn't have to stoop to his level. And he made a comment also about, it was after his education stuff, about you put your money where your heart is.
Mm-hmm.
Romney made that. And I can see that as being the next Obama campaign commercial. Romney says he puts his money where his heart is. Why is he putting it overseas?
That's interesting.
That's happening.
But all these commercials. I mean, I don't know who watches all these commercials. Where I live in New York City, you don't see that many presidential campaign commercials. So I don't really know about these commercials. Do they really affect?
It's not really a battleground state. I'm seeing them in Ohio.
Oh, I see.
I'm going through Iowa. I'm not seeing them down south in Birmingham whatsoever at all.
Well, but do people actually change their minds based on TV commercials?
Well, I think that they're a little bit more educational focused. There's a lot more people that are going to see these television commercials than watch the debate, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
You can't argue that. I mean, if we're just going through such an inundation with this commercial time. I mean, you're going to have $1 billion spent basically in commercial time nationwide, and.
But this is a television country.
That's where we're going to get most of our information from. It's not going to be from these debates. I mean,
but
commercials and debates.
But you're talking about information. Information is clearly information. If it never was before, it's clearly far secondary. To celebrity behavior. And in other words, style is much more important than content. It always was in America, and now it's worse than ever. And so when you see the debates, it's all about how people look, not what they say.
Yeah, and that's also, and that's why I said, like any other Democrat, I was so upset. But when you go back and you look at it, if you're 27 lives in 33 minutes from Romney, I mean, that's staggering. And when people really start to see, because this is going to be a big part of the campaign when it comes to advertising from here on out with Barack. Barack doesn't have to stand there and call him a liar. You know who can, though? Next week, Joe Biden, he will have carte blanche to tear into Ryan. I can almost guarantee you.
Well, the only thing they're going to have to watch out for is the desire to make up too much for the passivity of the president. Biden might come out a little too hard.
Yeah, you don't want to call him a dick right off the bat.
Well, he is.
After an hour.
I mean, he is a wiener. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, he's a dick, is what he is.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
Both condescending pricks, but you don't really want to get put in the corner with them. You don't really want to play their ball game. You can elevate yourself above that. And I think that's what Barack is trying to do. All at the same time, just looking down, smiling, realizing that every time these guys spew another lie, that's just more commercial time. Commercial time.
I'm sure a lot of people who support Obama desperately wish that you're saying what's going to happen. I got to move on.
Okay, have a great night, Mike. Thanks.
You too, John. Who should we go to? Regina, you're on, Regina.
Hi, how are you?
Hey.
I've been listening to the conversation, and what I find shocking that nobody seems to be covering, not even the news. Everybody wants to know why Obama was so tired. He got that 3 a.m. phone call. Did people not see, and the only way I saw it was it went across as a little ticker tape caption, Syrian government bombed Turkey on the morning of the debate, which would have been like 3 a.m. our time. Syrian government bombed Turkey. Our president was dealing with a major, trying to make sure that the Turkish government did not go up to full-scale war, because they did retaliate and they did shoot bombs back over into Syria. That's what he was dealing with. People want to know why he got there 2 hours before the debate, because he was doing the country's business. He was calling the UN Security Council. He was dealing with the Secretary of State. He was dealing with that to make sure that this did not come up into a full-scale war, and they did get passed. People wanted to know why he looked like he was ready to go. Well, they got it passed in the morning on the 4th that they would not go and do a retaliation. The Turkish government did go ahead and pass a resolution within their own Congress.
You're saying that his debate performance was dictated by the fact that he was tired.
Well, I'm going to say yes, he was tired. That's part of it, and that was why. And that, to me, is quite legitimate. He got a 3 a.m. phone call, and there was a major issue going on between Turkey and Syria, and a war could have sparked overnight. But secondly, I also think that, I've heard people talk about the angry black man. I don't know if people saw what all day on Tuesday, the second that the Drudge Report, Fox News, and everything devoted their time to the angry Obama. And you will see the anger. We're going to reveal it at 7 o'clock tonight on Sean Hannity. We're going to show you the videotape. That's all they had going all day long.
But are you suggesting that because these idiots said that he's going to be angry, he decides to react to them by not being angry?
No, I think what he had to do, because again, and I'm an African American woman, I've got brothers, fathers, and cousins, male, and a black man cannot. We cannot speak to anybody, police officers, any other person equally as a white counterpart could. I mean, I've been in the car with my white friends, and I've seen them go off, even after they've had a drink or two, with police officers. If that had been me or my brother or my husband, we'd have been in jail.
So you think that affects
and let go.
So you think that thing is so pervasive and so American that affects even the president of the United States?
It does. It does in the strategy. Remember, all the people around him are white men, okay? And they are saying, look, you cannot show the anger. Plus, he has been raised. I mean, people, if he were to go into any community in the South, they're not going to say, are you from Kenya? Are you half black? Are you half white? No, they're going to see an African-American man, and he will get the beat down like anybody else, plain and simple. So, yeah, you have to be cautious. And I think he wanted to maintain his presidential nature. We knew that Romney, I mean, everybody knew. People, well, why didn't he say the 47% comment? Well, it had already been leaked that Romney had his answer, okay? And I know you saw him give it, or maybe you didn't, on Sean.
Yeah, but so what if he had his answer? It's not, you can't.
You didn't want to give him a platform of 67 million people to say, oh, I'm so sorry. No, don't give him that platform. Do not. I was in favor of not having him.
Oh, so you think
Romney had an answer?
So you think that Romney's answer would be, I regret saying that, and then he would get away with looking like a decent guy, right?
Well, he would start the thing about, I really never intended it like that, and he would have had a forum of 67 million people. On Fox News, how many people saw it? Maybe a few million, maybe, but not 67 million. Okay, and he would have played it, because one thing I'll give Romney, he can be a pretty good actor when he wants to be. I watched all of the Republican debates, and I saw this man change his lines, change his approach, change his everything several times. And again, another thing I'll say too is, I'm also a lawyer. I went to law school, did the mock court, which is a big debate basically that you're having against another team, and you do your research. But what you don't expect, you do your research on what the person's positions are, what case law supports you, or articles, or anything you can find. But what you don't expect is the person to come out and do a complete 360, which is what Romney did. Romney did a 360, and I agree with the gentleman before. When I saw Barack smiling, I said, okay, and I saw the ad go up the next morning, and I'm in California, not a battleground state, the next morning. If you cannot trust him here, and they showed the debate, and they talked about the issue of the taxes.
Right.
They said, how can you trust him here? And they showed the Oval Office desk.
Listen,
it was just so clear, and it was like, damn,
let me
has heard Romney with his.
Hold it. I'm not Jim Lehrer, so I got to interrupt. We got to.
Jim was kind of weak.
Poor Jim, and Big Bird out of a job.
And I respect him, but he was just, I think, a little bit.
Nah. You know what?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he just didn't have the energy to deal with these guys. I think you know what? Who'd done a better job? Big Bird.
Probably.
Yeah, Big Bird would say. Big Bird would say, if he stood up all 8 feet of him and said, "Now, come on, can't we all be nice together?" It would have had an effect, I would like to see Big Bird moderate the next debate. All right, so
and one last point I want to
make. Because I got to move on.
There was a difference between the perception of women who watched that debate and men.
Interesting.
And I was watching the Jennifer Granholm show. Well, first one I saw was when Chris Matthews was talking, and the woman works for Grio, and I can't remember her name right now. But she had mentioned how she thought that he was very rude and disrespectful to Jim Lehrer. And I said, I felt that way too. Well, they had a real poll done. It was the first real one, not just like a quick call of 100 people on Jennifer Granholm's show the next day. And it came out, her show doesn't come on until 7 at night, I think it was the first airing. And that show had shown that President Obama's likability went up by 6 points to 54%. Romney stayed at 44%.
Oh, this is really fascinating. This is absolutely this is fascinating.
Who saw that felt that he was really I felt he was really disrespectful to Jim Lehrer, who was a senior citizen.
Right.
Who, he's not as sharp as he used to be. He was leaning over the podium, pointing his fingers. I just thought totally.
That was so aggressive and sadistic. That was really something. And I think the reason that Romney did that was throwing a bone like in all the other debates, how they insulted all the news people. He still had to do that for his right-wing group.
And the last point, and I'm going to let you go, is notice that Romney had his campaign backpedaled on every point that everybody's calling him, oh, he's moving to the center. Well, they all got, no, we're not providing coverage for pre-existing conditions. No, we are not, we are not cutting taxes on the rich. No, we are not. Everything he said in that debate, his campaign was backpedaling back on within hours of the debate. Yet and still, the mainstream media and everybody else was pretty much saying, oh, well, gee, Romney looks like he's finally making that pivot. No, he didn't. He said it and lied to the American public, right in their face.
I got to move on.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Regina. Let's go to, did we take a break? All right, we're going to take one more call, then we got to take a break. But stay on the phone, those people who are on the phone during the break, and we'll go right to your calls afterwards. Let's take one more call before the break. Let's go to Mark in Illinois.
Hi, Mike. Appreciate what you do.
Hey, thank you.
On the president the other night, I think he's off his game. One of three reasons. Had something at home going on. The way Michelle looked whenever she came out there, I mean, she just looked kind of despondent when she came out there.
That is true. She looked depressed the other night.
Yeah, she wasn't her normal bubbly, wasn't smiling at the camera and everything.
Maybe they had a big argument, and that's what all that sweetie stuff was about. I'm not joking. That happens, you know.
Well, that's true. But I think they're professional enough they could glaze over that in the circumstance and everything. Or my second thought's maybe there's some world event that we couldn't discuss, Middle East or something. And my third thought is he threw the game on purpose.
Now, why would he do that?
Well, he has so many polls and everything's out there saying that he's ahead of Romney so much, and maybe to light a fire underneath the base and get the base out there and keep supporting him. And
in other words, he didn't want people taking it for granted that he was so far ahead that they didn't have to work hard, or so he deliberately. This is quite a chess move you're talking about. He deliberately screwed up so that people would say that they had to work harder to help him.
Yeah, to regenerate the base.
Yeah, but on the other hand, but then he's taking the big risk of alienating so many people that he might just cancel that out. You know.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's about all I can really think of.
I think there's a lot of people. I know some people actually who are very sort of marginally are going to vote for him and are disgusted with him. And after seeing that, they are really turned off. You know. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, listen, I got to go to a break. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Keep it up, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back, and we've got a bunch of calls on the line. We'll go straight to your calls.
Sirius XM left 127.
Okay, Mike Fader, Sirius XM. Well, you heard what the guy said. You know what station this is. What is the matter with you people? I got like 8 people on the line. We go to a commercial. What do you all have, ADD or something? God damn. All right, Sharon from Texas, you're on.
Hi, Mike. How are you today?
Okay.
I'm actually from North Carolina. I'm a truck driver. I'm in Texas right now.
Okay.
But I just had a few thoughts about the debate. My husband and I were actually in a truck stop in New Mexico watching the debate. We stopped and watched it. Mm-hmm. And I just think that Romney gave so much rope to hang himself with in that debate that the next debate's going to be an entirely different scenario. I mean, yeah, my heart was in my shoes watching the debate because it just was not what I expected. I really expected the president to decimate him in the debate because he was. I think I read an article. He was gish galloping. Romney was just telling lie after lie after lie after lie after lie, and it kind of puts your opponent in a position of how do you come back?
Right, you get all confused and you don't know what to do. The guy's lying so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just and I was like, when did Romney become a moderate? When did he become almost? He'll be more liberal than Obama by the end of the debate. That's what I was thinking. I was like, you just back down on every single position that.
Well, he's a salesman. He had an extra 30 or 40 million or 50 million people watching him than he's used to having watch him, even at the Republican primary debates. And he knows how to work the room. He said what people wanted to hear.
Well, I really believe that he just, because, okay, the buzz that I was hearing after the debate, of course I was in a truck stop, so I was with a bunch of truck drivers who normally tend to lean right a whole lot. And, but you could just see the reactions of the people, and I tend to agree that women reacted a little differently to it, because I saw Romney as kind of rude and a bully and, just stomping all over Jim Lehrer like he was, and interrupting. I mean, it did not appeal to me. And what he was saying, I knew it was all lies, but I was just sitting, literally my mouth was hanging open. I probably looked real uncouth sitting there. But, I just think that the next debate will be a lot different, and the Biden-Ryan debate will be a hoot. I think it's going to be great.
Well, I think that you made a lot of good points, and this is what the earlier caller Regina said, and you're saying it again. It's fascinating to me, and it's typical that I wouldn't think about this because I'm a male, right? That I wouldn't think of this point of view, is that I watched Romney be sadistic and rude to Jim Lehrer, right? And I watched him being a bully to both Obama and Jim Lehrer and to Big Bird, right? And yet my conclusion was that Obama didn't stand up for himself. He wasn't tough enough and he wasn't man enough, right? Typical male point of view. It's interesting, right? But women looking at this thought to themselves, man, what a rude bully this other guy is. They can afford to think that way because they've got like a different attitude about it. And men have this very masculine attitude, like who comes out ahead, the last man standing, blah, blah, blah.
That was the exact words that my husband was saying to me, and I was like, do you not see excuse my language, he was being a a-hole,
Right,
I was
right.
like, do you not see how and he's like, Obama should jump right in, and I said,
that's what I was saying too. And what's interesting is that it could be that maybe you and Regina are onto something here that men don't see, which is that he may have gained even more of the women's vote than he had before.
He may have, and like I said, I think you will see a difference in the next debate. Just listening to what his campaign is saying, we're definitely looking at this, and we'll come out, different next time. I think that he's going to call Romney on all his lies next time.
But
because he had a 67 million person audience. Can he back down then?
But one of the problems is that they divided the debate by their own agreement. They divided the debate up into sections, and this was supposed to be on domestic issues, i.e. the economy. And this is where he was the weakest, is where he should have had the strongest showing, and he didn't have it.
Right.
So next time it should be.
I was disappointed in that, but I don't think that isn't the next one more of a town hall kind of thing?
Yeah. So that should be interesting.
And I really think that that's going to be Romney's downfall. He's going to have to actually speak to people.
Oh no.
He will have to speak to us people.
No, that's something he's not good at, because he might, he'll have to come down from his car elevator to actually speak to people.
Yes, he will, and Barack Obama is fantastic at that.
Oh, so that maybe
great at that.
Maybe he'll redeem himself. Well, I gotta take another call here. So.
Okay, thank you. You have a good day.
You too, Sharon. Let's go to who? Mary, you're on, Mary, from Long Island. Mary from Long Island.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing? Yeah, I just ditto. I almost hung up because listening to these two women, it's like ditto that. It's like Mike has to hear the female point of view. I have heard this. My own personal reaction, and I'm about your age. I went through the whole women's movement, and I went through two pretty nasty marriages with chauvinists and so on. And I looked at him, what revulsion. And I've been following Romney anyway, but he just, oh my God. And Obama, I was disappointed. I'm a supporter. I was disappointed in him, but I understand. I mean, you have to say something about Obama supporters, especially female ones. We love him. Mm-hmm. And it's the people that are against Obama hate him. I mean, I know this sounds very clear-cut, and yes, there are people in the middle and so forth, but there's an emotion attached to Barack. I can't even begin to explain it.
Huh.
I mean, I called him Barack. No, I can't. And I know it sounds dumb. I mean,
no. I mean, to me, this is all really interesting.
First black president.
Yeah.
You know what this means to America? I think If he accomplishes, it would be a miracle. The fact that he's attempting, well, he's not attempting, but maybe his administration will help get America over its racism. It has broken it up. It has absolutely broken up this evil in our country, and women don't like racism. I'm sorry. Now, of course, yes, you do have your Southern.
Well, wait a minute. Wait. There's a lot of Republican women out there who are voting for Romney. You know, they're not going to they can go in the voting booth. You know, I mean, and we're talking about, you know.
You know who really supports Romney? Business people. I'm serious, because they think that Obama's anti-business. This is I'm a New Yorker. I mean,
right.
Believe me, I live along. I hear this, right? I mean, there were years ago Tea Party people showing up at Brookville events. You know, I don't even begin to tell you what's going on here. But all right, be that as it may. But there's wealthy Democrats. You know, people overlook that. You know how much money he raised? My God, check his fundraising for the last month. It is historic and shocking. This is Obama's campaign. He 2 million additional new donors, and it's like $181 million in 1 month. I mean, it's shocking.
I got a lot of people on the line. I should be fair.
That's all right, because those two women said a lot of what, just ditto.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. I mean, this is an important point that everybody's making, that the women are making here. Who should we go to? Okay, Niles, you're on, Niles.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Hey.
You know, Romney, he says he's going to cut everyone's taxes by 20%. But then he says he's going to cut funding to other states for the schools.
Mm-hmm.
So here on Long Island, I'm already paying a couple of grand a year in school taxes. Won't my school taxes just double or triple? It's like he's not going to take it out of his pocket. He's going to make the states take it out of your pocket.
Listen, Romney's full of shit. He's gonna cut taxes. He's gonna cut taxes for rich people. He's gonna fuck everybody else, and everything he said was and everything he said was a lie. But it would have been very nice if the president actually pointed out his lies. You know.
He was just way too soft on me. He really was. And I'm a big Obama fan. I love the guy. I love what he's trying to do for the country.
Well,
it's trying to help the middleman.
It
really is.
It's one thing to be a decent, sort of gentlemanly individual, and the women love him and everything like that. But still, you know, he could have stood up for himself, male or female. He could have stood up for himself.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, you can't stand there and get bitch slapped. There's no doubt about it.
Well, whoa! We don't talk that way on this show. We don't do that, you know, because I have to go home to my sweetie, and I don't want to run that kind of shit. All right, I'm moving on. All
right, fair enough. Have a good night.
Okay, we don't say things like that here. Okay, Matt from Michigan, you're on.
Yeah, hi, Mike.
Hi.
I assume occasionally you watch the Prime Minister Takes Questions on C-SPAN.
No, I never have. I never watched that.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic that you watch the House of Commons or the Prime Minister Takes Questions. And because of that, I don't understand this bullying. Now, maybe it's just being a male.
Uh-huh.
But if you watch the House of Commons or the Prime Minister having to take questions, you know, bullying is part of the game, and there's no hard feelings. They have to mix it up every day, all the time, constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And it hones their debate skills. It makes them actually take positions, and I think it's fantastic. You know, bullying a bully, I mean, that's part of politics. Politics is about power, so I just don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he didn't stand up for himself, and I wasn't surprised that Obama got his clock cleaned, because if you go back to the 2008 primaries, by far he was the worst debater. Of course, the debate isn't the only thing. I mean, I think if debate was the most important thing, Joe Biden probably would have been the president, but he wasn't a good debater back then. He was okay in a town hall format, but, you know, just going toe-to-toe, that's not his style for whatever reason. So I wasn't surprised. But I really think that this points out why the major parties, even when they're in power, they have an incumbent candidate, they should actually have a legitimate primary and make their candidate go out and take positions and meet the public and fight for his position again.
Mm-hmm.
He should have been primaried, even if there's no intention of him actually being replaced.
Well, I think that makes sense.
At the same time, you're honing, you're honing a successor. You're grooming a successor, and I think that's really a good thing to primary the candidate. And secondly, and then I'll hang up, that, you know, mess that went on is just proof positive that the alternative candidates should be given a platform. Mm-hmm. If Gary Johnson were up there, or Jill Stein, and they were asked about Social Security, for example, they would never have said, yeah, I just agree with the other guy. That's my position. That just wouldn't have happened. You know, the alternative candidates should be up there also, and that forces the main candidates to actually try to distinguish themselves from each other. Mm-hmm. Have a good evening, Mike.
Okay, you too. Let's go. Who should we go to? Larry from Canada. Larry from Canada, you're on.
Hello, Mike.
Hey.
You have a very good show, and thank you for everything.
Sure.
I just want to have 2 points, one about the debate and one about the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching it, and I don't like split screens. And also, I thought all the questions were all softball questions.
Right.
I think it would be better if instead of just one moderator, they had three, maybe from the three networks, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News.
Right.
And then maybe the questions would be more diverse. And they need a clear criteria to allow the other candidates like Jill Stein from the Green Party and Rocky Anderson to participate.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second point is in terms of the campaign, you were mentioned before that Ryan was at an NAACP
right,
but seemed to stay on his point.
Even after he was being booed.
Yeah, and I just wonder, do Americans vote at all in terms of conviction? It seems like Obama doesn't have any convictions. Romney seems to be flip-flopping and everything. So, and when you compare it to, say, FDR, right, who had a lot of convictions, do Americans vote in terms of conviction at all?
That's a rhetorical question, right?
Well, I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yes, they do, Larry. Go back to Canada. They do vote on convictions. All right, I got to go. I got to wind it up, Larry. Thanks for calling.
No problem.
All right, that's it. That's all the time we have tonight. We'll be back next week with some really interesting guests. And a guy has written an absolutely fascinating book, The 100 Most Influential and Important Social Progressive People in American History. And I think it's a wonderful book, and it's something that's actually inspiring in the midst of all this creepiness and despair. So he'll be on next week with a bunch of other guests, too. All right, thanks for calling, and that's it.
Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's my story. Oh, that's my story. Well, I ain't got a witness, and I can't prove it, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.